going to be talking about what we've learned over the past 25 years in conducting our research here and what that has taught us about our management challenges that we face. So in preparing my talk, I was trying to stick to the theme of the conference, reversing the decline. I think that's a little ambitious for marine mammals. There's a lot that we don't know yet, but there is a lot that we have learned. So I'm going to begin by talking about our significant findings and using case studies to present for some of the resident populations how things have changed over the past 25 years and relate some of those changes to human impacts. So assessing the current status of species, and then also looking at the management needs and challenges, and hopefully end by helping to prepare us better for the future and begin a discussion about how we will manage these species. So our organization has been working in the Bahamas since the early 1990s. We're based in Abaco Island, so much more pristine area 25 years ago than Nassau, New Providence. We've been filling key data gaps in the population and behavioral ecology of species, really in the region, as in the wider Caribbean region. There's not much known about a lot of the animals that occur here, particularly the deep divers. And when we began in the early 1990s, the Abacos, the marine environment of the Abacos, was considered to be relatively pristine. But of course, over those 25 years, that environment has changed. And so now we're studying some of the resident populations that have actually been impacted by human activities. As Charlotte already described, we use a multidisciplinary approach in our work. We conduct small vessel and large vessel visual and acoustic surveys using standardized methods that are established in our field. We deploy satellite tags to look at ranging patterns of animals, also collect photo identifications for as many individuals as we can for every group that we see. And these data have allowed us to estimate abundance of animals using mark recapture methods and look at reproductive success and also population structuring and ranging. We collect tissue samples using remote biopsy sampling, and those samples are used to assess the chemistry in the tissues. We are looking at contaminants in blubber, as well as the stable isotopes and fatty acids that Charlotte mentioned, and of course doing population genetics. There's another type of tag that we also use, mostly in assessing some of the disturbance and responses of animals to Navy exercises at AUTEC. And that's a tag that's deployed for shorter periods of time that gives us very fine scale information on their foraging behavior. So the first species that I'm going to highlight are Blainville's beaked whales. This species has been the focus of our work for the last 11 years, since there was a mass stranding of beaked whales, and the U.S. Navy was connected to the stranding because they had a multi-ship exercise in the area. So as a result of that, the U.S. Congress has appropriated significant funds to try to figure out why beaked whales are particularly vulnerable or sensitive to military sonar. And we've been involved in a lot of the studies that have taken place. In fact, a lot of what has been learned right here in the Bahamas to answer that question. So the sighting map is similar to what Charlotte showed for sperm whales. The orange dots are sighting locations for beaked whales. This isn't corrected for effort at all. This is just every sighting that we've had where we've actually been able to collect some data from the animals. And you can see that there's clusters of sightings, including at the U.S. Navy's AUTEC range, as well as off the south end of Abaco Island and the east end of the island. And those are just places where we've had shore-based efforts, so have increased our sighting opportunities. What we've learned over the past 25 years for this species is that they have limited ranging patterns. Whales from Abaco don't go to Andros. They're not like manatees, which is quite surprising. They're very much homebodies. and their ranges are, for the most part, less than about 100 kilometers. There's very high sight fidelity, particularly for adult females. And these behaviors have led to very strong population structuring. I gave a presentation at the last Marine Mammal Conference suggesting that the whales within the Great Bahama Canyon are divided into subpopulations that really need to be managed as separate conservation units, including one of the subpopulations on the Navy Range. We've shown that there's low abundance of animals on the Navy Range. There's only about 40 individuals that use the range annually. So these characteristics combined make that population on the range quite vulnerable to disturbance. And we've actually shown that there is lower reproductive success for those animals when compared to Abaco. So from a management perspective, this is quite complicated because we have a small subpopulation of animals that inhabit a U.S. Navy range, but because that range is in a foreign country, their management is not regulated by the U.S. regulators as the other Navy ranges that are in U.S. waters. So basically, there's no pathway. There's no way that's there's no policy to manage that population and ensure that the disturbances that they are experiencing don't result in population decline. But we are making some progress, and hopefully by the next time we meet here, I'll be able to report on that. But it is complicated. The next species that I'm going to highlight are bottlenose dolphins, and these are coastal bottlenose dolphins that reside on Little Bahama Bank. As with beaked whales, bottlenose dolphins live in resident communities. So on Little Bahama Bank, there's several communities of dolphins that are resident to those areas year-round. There's a little bit of mixing, but also like beaked whales, in other parts of this species range, coastal bottlenose dolphin communities are considered separate stocks or conservation units. One of the communities that we've been photo-identifying for the past 25 years is in the Sea of Abaco, the body of water between Marsh Harbor and Hopetown or Manowar. And we've learned that this population is declining. In fact, there's a 40% decline in the number of animals using that area annually over that time period. The decline began in the late 1990s, which was coincident with multiple tropical cyclones that hit the area. And those were the first hurricanes that we had experienced there in 30 years. So pretty much a generation of bottlenose dolphins. So they may have been naive, and perhaps we lost some individuals as a result of that. But also as a result of the hurricane, there has been a development boom in the area. A lot of people, when they rebuilt their homes, they built their homes bigger, they expanded their dock or built a dock. There was a lot of economic boom in the area. And we believe that boom has contributed to continued changes in the marine environment, and that may be the reason why this group of bottlenose dolphins hasn't recovered from the impacts of the hurricanes. And part of the reason that we believe that is because just 60 miles to the south is another community of bottlenose dolphins off the southwest end of Abaco Island that have remained stable since the 1990s. And unlike the Sea of Abaco, the environment here hasn't changed that much. There was no boom of development since the late 1990s, and so much lower human impact. So clearly management of the Sea of Abaco community of dolphins is needed in order to reverse the decline, and that's obviously a local issue. It will require developing an action plan that may need to begin slowing growth in the area and promoting more sustainable living. And as all of us know, that is going to be a slow process, but will also probably be difficult to implement. The next species I'm going to talk about are Bahamian pilot whales. From our tagging work with pilot whales, we learned that we can't just claim them as Bahamians. They actually range outside of the Bahamas and into U.S. waters as far north as South Carolina. So the map shows the tracks from male and female pilot whales. The females are in red, the males are in blue, and females don't travel less distance than males. The tags just stay on males for longer. Much like sperm whales, pilot whales form these stable social units throughout their lifetimes. So these groups are leaving the Bahamas and traveling into U.S. waters. They're part of the U.S. Southeast stock of pilot whales, and as such, they will be managed through collaboration with U.S. regulators. They also their range also takes them to not just include the waters of one Navy range. They range to areas that off the southeast U.S. Is also part of a new range that's in development there called the Jacksonville Range Complex. So there will be Navy compliance that will be required at that range that hopefully will help lead the way for environmental compliance here at AUTEC as well. And the last species I'm going to highlight are melon-headed whales. They're another oceanic deep diving species. And although they're here regularly in the summertime, we've learned that they're not year-round residents. The tags there show, they're all in green because we don't know the sex of these animals, but we've tagged melon-headed whales in tongue of the ocean in the summertime, and none of the whales actually left the Bahamas during that time. The longest tag duration was 45 days. And we actually have resightings of individuals, the same individuals in tongue of the ocean and off of Abaco over 15 years. So we're seeing these animals repeatedly over years. But the reason that we believe that they're not year-round residents is because we've taken biopsy samples from individuals in tongue of the ocean and in Northwest Providence Channel. We found very high levels of persistent organic pollutants, and specifically polybrominated diphenyl ethers, or PBDEs. This is a chemical that's used as a flame retardant, so like in our clothes, in the furniture in here. And the levels of PBDE that we've measured in these animals are high enough to cause reproductive failure, so extremely high levels. We haven't found those levels in any of the other species, in particular the beaked whales that we know are resident here. So despite the fact that the dump in New Providence is an absolute disgrace and is way beyond the point of needing help, we actually went to the dump yesterday morning. I don't know why. But we believe that these chemicals are not accumulating at these levels around New Providence, so it provides some evidence of seasonality for these animals. But in order to address management of melon-headed whales, the first thing we need to do is figure out where they're accumulating these persistent organic pollutants. So hopefully I've demonstrated that there are management of marine mammals is a complex problem in the Bahamas. It's actually not unique to the Bahamas, but here we have a high species diversity, and many of these species require different management approaches. I've talked about year-round residents and other species that range widely. So local management versus international collaborative efforts. There's a wide range of habitats that would need protection in order to protect marine mammals, ranging from manatees using mangrove habitat and beaked whales and other deep divers in the canyons. There's also varying degrees of need for action. Some of the resident species are found in low abundance, so they have low resilience to change. So we need to, in some cases, we'll need to act quickly to reverse declines. But I think it's really important that we acknowledge that there's still a lot of data that is needed. We're still very data limited. For example, this is the same sightings map for the Blainville beaked whales that I showed earlier, but showing the entire archipelago here. And as you can see, although we have learned a lot about this species in the northern and central Bahamas, we really don't know anything about them in the southern islands. And probably more importantly, we don't know anything about them in the western Bahamas, where there are plans for drilling for oil and gas. The challenges that we face are common to all conservation efforts in the region, but there are some particular challenges that are difficult for marine mammals that I just want to touch on briefly. Despite their size, many Bahamians will never actually see a whale, and that's because a lot of the whale species here inhabit deep water. So there's this disconnect between the public and a potential conservation need. But manatees have provided us with a unique opportunity to reach out to Bahamians and teach them about manatees, but use that as a way to talk about marine mammals more widely. And the Facebook group that Felice has been monitoring has been an excellent tool at doing that. She regularly posts information about other marine mammals in the area. And I don't need to tell anybody here about how much our environment has changed, particularly around New Providence over the past 25 years. But again, there's a couple of issues that I just want to highlight that are particular to marine mammals and cetaceans in particular. Even though the melon-headed whale studies suggest that the contaminants that they've accumulated were acquired outside the Bahamas. The Bahamas has a huge waste management issue, and this is a critical problem for all wildlife here. In addition, shipping traffic has increased globally. There's been a fourfold increase in shipping traffic over the past 20 years. There are 5 major international shipping lanes that pass through the Bahamas. So whales and dolphins that inhabit these areas, these shipping lanes, have been impacted to these changes in their environment. Increasing noise is one of the biggest concerns amongst marine mammal scientists today. Marine mammals need noise they use sound to find their food, to communicate, to evade predation, and what's the other one? To navigate, thank you. So obviously, increased noise in their marine environment can be detrimental to their survival. So in preparing for the future, I think we obviously need to prioritize our needs to prevent further decline. We need to protect the pelagic zones. We can add some of these areas to the Caribbean Challenge Initiative. We should establish shipping lanes, so at least we have some control over where the noise is concentrated in the channels. We could even establish regulations. We could regulate the type of cargo that's being carried through our waters. That's been done elsewhere around the world. We need to fill some of the key data gaps, maybe focus on the areas where we know some changes are potentially going to occur, and that provides some opportunity for collaborating with colleagues in the wider Caribbean region. And of course, increasing education and awareness and building capacity are hugely important. So to prepare for the future management of marine mammals in the Bahamas, we are seeking collaborations. If anybody's interested in partnering in any of this work, please talk to us. Thank you.